welcome to Primetime Mitch. This is a little bit of a surprise. It's a quick review on Something in the Water, directed by Haley Easton Street. It is fresh in my mind because I've just come back from the theatre having watched it. I gotta say, I didn't really expect to like this for the same reasons as I'm going to explain for why I don't think this movie will get as much credit as it deserves. Basically, upon going to this movie, I expected to see a cliche. One, in terms of shark movies, and two, with it being such a modern release, I am not the most appreciative of a lot of modern writing and a lot of tropes that we see nowadays. I'm very traditionalist, I don't mind admitting that. So I wasn't exactly that excited to see this, but at the same time I was curious. I wanted it to give me something a little bit different. I thought it had a lot of good points. Couple of cliches here and there, some continuity errors, and a sprinkling of questionable dialogue in the circumstance. But overall, I was pleasantly surprised. Now, this is where I will go into detail on what I liked and what I didn't like. If you've not seen it, take what I've just said as the video. Go see it. Obviously, drop me a like as well, of course. And maybe subscribe to the channel while you're at it. Hit that notification bell. All that shebang. But please do not watch further if you have not seen this movie. Spoiler alert. Incoming review. So yeah, this whole story sort of starts in the city. There is a scene where Meg and Kayla, having just been on, I imagine, a date or a night out together, are walking home and they are victim of an assault to which Meg is brutally attacked. Because Kayla instigates it, obviously, I could tell straight away there's going to be some kind of guilt down the line. But what I was actually expecting was for the 1 year later to be Kayla going off on a holiday to try and clear her head and start again. What I didn't expect to see was Meg. And she is the protagonist. I was not expecting that. So that was the first nice little twist there. I was like, okay, you got my attention. She's heading off to a wedding with her friends. And obviously Kayla's come to pick her up, so it's made a bit of an awkward trip back. But what we do get on the trip back is a chance to see the effects of what that assault had on Meg. She struggles with the car braking suddenly and her relationship with Kayla. Now, I was okay with this at the moment, you know, but I was kind of worried when the rest of the friends came in that we'd see a lot of sort of maybe juvenile dialogue or something like that, because there's been so much of these kind of films before where you just do not like the characters at all. So I was a little bit skeptical. It starts out that way. Cam is so hyperactive. She is so in your face. It's like, oh, I can see I'm going to be rooting for whatever is in the water when it comes to her. You meet Lizzie, the bride, who is very sort of, she sounds like she's more from where I'm from, and she wouldn't be having a wedding out in the Caribbean. So I was sort of relating to her a little bit. And you have Ruth, who's just kind of a neutral, really. She's quite caring, has quite a bit of personality about her. So I wasn't really hating the characters, although some of the dialogue does go above my head a little bit. This is a group of girls. I'm happy to leave them to it. You can tell there's not a lot of trust in Cam because of how she is. I get the feeling that she's organised quite a lot of the activities for these friends, but she doesn't seem too trustworthy, and I don't think the rest of them seem to trust her that much. I was getting that kind of needly feeling between them. Rust bucket of a boat. No real plan. But what we did get before they set sail is quite a lot of character building. Now, I read a couple of reviews earlier saying that some of the characters were one-dimensional. I did not see that, and I am used to going in on one-dimensional characters. I cannot stand horror movies where I want the killer to massacre them all. I wasn't feeling that here. I was interested to see what was going to happen with these people. So I don't really agree with that take. I mean, if you wanted more from your characters, fine. I didn't get too much, and it wasn't too minimal either. I kind of had a decent idea of each character. Let's move on. I also don't think it was lacking in backstory. We had some backstory straight away. They could have just related back to an attack and talked about it without us having any real understanding of just what it was like. But they showed us very briefly at the beginning, so we got that setup. So you at least knew this was going to be an emotional journey for somebody regardless. The trip itself, it's just kind of your usual head out to sea, frolic on an island and return. But they obviously want to set Kayla and Meg up to try and reconcile. What I liked about this was it didn't go too deep with the whole, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it. All the remorse, the regret, the hatred from one side, the desperation on the other to try and bring that bond back. They didn't need to add all that. It would have been too much and it would have got boring really quickly. It was just a simple, I'm really sorry. And then you cut back to the other guys on the beach who were sort of waiting to see what happens to them both. It was minimal, but not lazy. We get a little glimpse there is something in the water. It's a very neatly shot half fin and ripple behind Meg and Kayla that gives you the foreshadowing. And then it's sort of almost a little surprising that Ruth succumbs to what she does. She's quite close to land and her reaction is really effective, I think. It's shock, then realization, then panic in stages. And it's a great shot. The effects are very, very good when she comes out of the water. I also like when they were taking her back to the boat that you could see it all still in the water. That's got a little bit of criticism later on about that. But I love the trail from the beach and the devastation that just this one bite had on the whole trip. This is where the characters come out themselves for me. They start showing signs of vulnerability, as you would in that situation, but particularly Cam, who up to now, if I was going to say, is there a character you really don't like that much? Probably her, but you can tell she has some demons. There's stuff in her head that she's hiding away. She's hiding behind that boisterous, larger-than-life personality. She has a lot of insecurities, I think, and you can tell that when they start criticising her for not thinking this through and putting them in this situation. She really takes it to heart. So I was quite impressed by how they gave her a little bit more. That's where she becomes less one-dimensional, in my opinion. Lizzie's the panicky one, but again, she comes out of her shell as this goes on, because she later on she makes reference to, I should be having Scotch eggs and sausage rolls in a village hall, not on a Caribbean resort eating tiger prawns and sea bass for my wedding. She almost wishes she was back to her down-to-earth roots. She's almost like she's, no pun intended, in above her head, and she's just begging to go back to that normal old life. She said, like, we shouldn't be here, we don't belong here. I really like that. She went from being kind of almost the weakest link there to being sort of quite an interesting character. I'm not doing this in any particular order, by the way. I'm just trying to throw out my thoughts. I love the fact that Cam went out with some heroics. She sort of made up for her mistakes by sacrificing herself. I think that was pretty cool. I also liked that it was Meg and Lizzie left together, because I think it would have been a huge cliche if you'd have been left with Kayla and Meg on their own in the middle of the water, like we've seen with so many other movies where they say all the sorries and they just cling to each other and hope they can get through it so they can have that life together afterwards. I expected them to be the last two in the water. They weren't. It was Kayla that went for help. And you don't really know what's going on with her for the whole time. So they actually give you a bond between two characters that weren't really that close throughout. They kind of had their bond there. And I like that. That was good. And again, it was another little swerve. I'm a minimalist. I don't like loads of stuff thrown in your face. I don't like heavy usage of CGI. This is why I was kind of worried about watching this movie, and I've avoided other movies like Black Demon and Under Paris for those reasons. I probably will watch them, but I know there's a heavy usage of CGI and there's an awful lot of sharks shown that isn't in this one, and I think it works. I think you get enough of the shark to realise what's going on. You get a couple of attack scenes at the end. Not the greatest visuals I've ever seen, but certainly not the worst. I can name a whole hell of a lot worse CGI than what I saw in this movie, particularly with some of the mockbusters that me and Amy watch. Oh, wow. Slight failures in the film. I would say they did a lot of close-up shots of Ruth's leg leaking blood into the sea, and obviously telling you, this is the risk that they have now. There's all this blood in the sea and sharks smell blood. But when it went to the long shots overhead of the group holding on to her, and obviously when they let her float away later, you don't see that huge red shadow around her. It would have been there. So that was a little bit of a continuity error if I was being nitpicky. Also, I think some of the laughing when the shark was circling them, although that would make sense if you'd almost gone delusional and you were losing your mind, but they hadn't got to that point yet, and I don't think they'd have been making a global warming joke when they're being circled by a predator in that way. But overall, I was okay with this movie. I thought it was more dedicated to the people than it was to the sharks. It was more dedicated to the impact on the behavior of these people. It wasn't all about shark attacks and big effects and big wow moments. It was about the people, and I prefer those kind of movies. Where this movie will lose out is because it just gets dropped into a bargain basement of a whole ton of others. So many people have done this kind of movie. We've seen Open Water, The Reef, 47 meters down. There are so many variations of this movie that unfortunately, if you do create a solid film, which I think this one was, it ultimately is, well, we've seen it before. it's another one. And I kind of feel sad about that. But at the same time, if you like what you like, who cares what the mainstream think? Overall, I think this was well acted. I enjoyed it. I think Haley Easton Street should be proud of this movie. I think it was a solid outing, particularly as a feature film debut. From what little I know about her, she's very experienced in the visual art of movies, but she has proven in this that she can put together a plausible story. It wasn't overly romantic, it was to the point. You got enough for each character to understand them, and you got enough development throughout to understand how they react and how they behave. We got minimal ridiculous effects. It wasn't overbearing. The score was very nice. Cinematography was very nice. The visuals, the shots, the location, all worked. So yeah, I liked it. I'm not going to lie. And it's a big surprise for me. And maybe a lot of people might hate it. Maybe it'll get low reviews. I don't know. This one certainly isn't getting a low review from Primetime Mitch today. Something in the Water, though not maybe the most inventive title I've ever heard, was a good experience. I'd recommend watching it. Give me your thoughts down below in the comments. Did you really hate it? Did you think it succumbed to tropes and traits and cliches that I didn't? Did you have fun with it? Did you not have fun with it? All down there below in the comments. I hope this review has been fun. Obviously, please leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Please share and subscribe. Send this out there to the Sharksploitation fan community. Give them something to discuss. I know there's quite a few out there. Bucket of Chump Podcast is one that I've talked to on Instagram before. They seem to do a really good job promoting shark movies across the eras, and the new ones coming out, this one included. Thanks guys, this has been Primetime Mitch. Mockbusters is coming up next with Emmy Horror, and that's quite a different story and quite a different shark.